Hi everyone, it's Nicole here from Mama Elephant with a no-line coloring card featuring Polychromos using the brand new Birdie Wreath and 3D Arch Banner, part of the February 2019 release. I know it's February and we are not thinking about the holidays yet, but I think it is a great thing to be able to create holiday cards all year round so we aren't creating a bunch at the last minute. I mentioned in my last video with the Birdie Wreath that one of my favorite things about this stamp set is that it's great all year round for many seasons, and that I would share a holiday themed card with you because I think the stocking cap, the holly and the berries are just awesome for holiday themed cards. So I started by trimming down a panel of cardstock. I started at 4 inches by 5.5 inches. I'm going to trim this down a little bit more. It's actually going to be 3 3/4 by 5.5. And I've inked it with chipped sapphire and mermaid lagoon inks first, and then some black soot around the edges to deepen and darken it. I wanted it to look more like a winter sky. Again, I know the seasonal wise, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, didn't we just do all of our holiday cards? But again, working on those early is a great thing to do, and I was a little bit surprised at how easy it was to create one because I really am in the spring type mood. However, we've been having quite a bit of snow still where I live, and so this actually wasn't too far reaching as far as seasons go. I'm going to go ahead now, and you can see I did trim down my panel a little bit more narrow. That's just going to make our scene a little bit more narrow but still have the entire portrait style of the card. That strip will still go from top to bottom, but it'll just be a little shorter on the sides. And I have taken some grit paste and placed it through a Heffy Doodle First Snow stencil. Any stencil here will work fine. For my no-line coloring, I am stamping on white cardstock. When I stamp on a darker colored cardstock, I often will use embossing ink because it doesn't fade into the paper. I've learned to use a pigment style ink when trying to do no-line coloring techniques because the ink, if it's a dye ink, will absorb into the paper and fade, and you're going to lose that line, which if you aren't going to be able to sit and color it all at once, and even sometimes at that, it can be really time consuming and you lose that definition. I think it's a lot easier to use a pigment ink. Well, because I'm using white paper today, I didn't want to use the clear embossing ink because I wouldn't be able to see the lines at all. So I picked a very light pigment ink. This is the Moonlight pigment ink from Mama Elephant. It's a very silvery light gray color. Perfect for coloring in my images. I'm going to do about half of the wreath here on camera, and then just know that I'm going to finish the rest of this off camera. It's a lot of little leaves. This technique is a bit more time consuming than some. I know my last card that I shared with this stamp set, I shared something a little bit quicker as far as coloring goes. Stamped them with a Versa Fine Onyx Black ink and colored in with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. For me, that is probably the fastest coloring technique. There's not a ton of going back and forth between your markers and adding shading and things. Watercoloring takes a little bit more time. You have to wait for colors to dry before you can kind of color next to each other. Copics probably are the second quickest for me as far as coloring goes. Colored pencils, little time consuming. No line coloring, quite a bit more time consuming. That's going to go for probably any no line coloring you do, no matter what the coloring medium. I think it just takes a little bit more work and a little bit more practice, which is definitely what I'm doing with my no-line coloring projects you're seeing on my channel right now. I want to get a little bit more proficient with that technique. I really love the no-line look. However, I definitely need practice. We all need practice with our coloring mediums, and I think it's just really beautiful. And as far as the different products I have used with the no line coloring technique, colored pencils are my favorite. They're definitely the one I feel the most comfortable with. And what I find funny about that is colored pencils were the coloring medium that I felt most comfortable with when I started my coloring journey and my card making journey. So kind of have come full circle, I think. And I'm hoping that that means that as I keep working to improve my technique, I can move on to Copics and no line coloring and watercolors and no line coloring, things like that. Just keep working and improving and playing with all of these wonderful products. The little birdie there, I did add a little yellow belly because I just love that. And then I kind of add a definition with a brown pencil for the legs and also to deepen and darken that underside. Don't be afraid to pull a completely different color out. In this instance, brown worked really well with the yellow. I'm going to pull a little gray. It's a lighter gray, but not a super, super light gray, in for the white areas of the stocking cap. And I'm just really just tracing the stamp itself and then blending out with that gray and white to add depth and dimension and texture. I want to show you the holly and the berries really quick. Outlining is what I wanted to say. The leaves with my darker green, pulling out a little bit lighter green, and then blending with my white. I like to lay down a layer of white first because that's really going to help with the highlight areas on everything. So I have done that for every leaf, for the bird, for the holly and the berries, for these little red berries here. Anything you see that I've colored, I laid down white pencil first, traced it with my darkest color in most instances, and then colored it in and added my blending. And that white is just going to serve as a fantastic highlight. I have received a few questions about colored pencil coloring. I'm going to touch on those briefly here. I really probably need to do a video about it and a post about it on my blog. But I do want to mention quickly, I do have Prismacolors colored pencils, and I have the Polychromos. I've had both of them. Prismacolors were the originals. I've had them for years and years. And then I did purchase Polychromos maybe a year and a half ago or so. It's been quite a while. I've had them a long time. My biggest thing and the reason I prefer Polychromos over Prismacolors, I do still love and use them both, but the Polychromos are oil-based, Prismacolors are wax-based. I don't get the waxy film and buildup when coloring with Polychromos, which I really love. The other big thing for me, Polychromos color on dark cardstock, which I know I'm not doing today, but I do have some examples of that in past videos, and I have one that I did just this week with other stamps on darker cardstock. They color on dark cardstock beautifully, and you still get the color, you still get the vibrancy. Absolutely amazing. My third big thing about Polychromos, the lead does not break like it does with Prismacolors when you sharpen them. And for me, that's huge because I had many pencils actually that I had to replace because I just couldn't sharpen them. The lead would break and break and break and break with the Prismacolors. And that just was a little frustrating. It's a much softer lead than the Polychromos. So those are just a few little tips, but otherwise, I love both. They do both color beautifully. This is also a brand new product. This is the 3D Arch Banner. I've die cut it from white cardstock, and I'm taking a previously released holiday stamp set. This is the Merry Christmas stamp set, and taking a phrase from that, and I am going to stamp this on the banner. I was going to try to figure out how to do it in my MISTI, and I just decided it was easier to do it on an acrylic block. Stamp that with a red ink. We're going to pop that kind of in the bottom third of the card so that the wreath is kind of hanging there into our banner. I folded the banner. I'm going to put some foam adhesive in the center back of the banner and then glue those ends down directly to my card. That foam adhesive on the back is going to help it stand up just a little bit. So I'm going to center that right on my panel, press that down in place. And then I know I die cut my wreath already, but I went ahead and colored that in. I'm going to wrap some little lawn trimmings twine there. And we're just going to secure this to the back of the panel. But I want to add foam adhesive squares to the back of my wreath so it's popped up as well. I want it to almost look like the wreath is hanging down in front of a window or something and you're looking out into this, you know, snowy sky. Peel off all the backing paper from all these little foam adhesive squares. And then we will simply center that wreath, pop it in place, wrap our twine to the back. I just put a little adhesive over it to hold that down, but I will take some foam adhesive and secure that and pop this whole panel up onto my card base, and you'll see that in a minute. Now we are gluing our bird with his stocking cap to the wreath. I absolutely love that little stocking cap. How cute is that? And we are going to adorn our wreath. We've got holly and berries. We've got berries. I stamped and colored multiples of these, all with no line coloring. It's really going to make a cohesive looking wreath. I really love how this turned out. So super pretty. And I'm just reusing my little Post-it tape and running these pieces through my die cutting machine. Some of the berries I'm going to secure flat to the card. Some are going to be adhered to the wreath itself, which of course has been popped up with foam adhesive for that wonderful depth and dimension. And you'll see what I mean here as I continue to add all of these little pieces. So here's a good example of one on the card base itself and then the one next to it up on the wreath. And as I add more and more of these little red touches throughout the wreath, it really gives that fantastic holiday feel. Definitely what I was going for here. I will link to my other video featuring the Birdie Wreath stamp set that has the more springtime feel to it, so you can see how versatile this stamp set is. I always love a stamp set that will work for more than one occasion. Feel like you really get your money's worth out of stamp sets like that. And you can even grab other birds or whatever it might be to adorn this wreath, things you might already have in your stash. So just a few more. I'm just gluing everything down in place with the glue tube ink from Lawn Fawn. I have just a few more little touches to add here and there. I do want to mention, after the pencil coloring was done, I went in with a black glaze pen and added detail to the eyes on the bird, added some little white pen detail to the cheeks and the beak. You could even do that to other areas of the image if you wanted to. You're not limited to just a few little places. If you want to add more white highlights, that would be awesome. And there was a couple of the berries that I didn't feel were blended very well, so I'm going to go back in and just do a little fixing here and there where I think that it needs just a little something. And again, I deepened up the reds with my brown pencil. Now I'm securing the ends of that lawn trimmings twine to the back of this panel, adding my foam adhesive. We'll peel all that off, pop this onto our white top fold card base. It's going to leave great white border down both sides. And this holiday card featuring the Birdie Wreath stamps and dies is all finished. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this no line coloring card featuring the Mama Elephant Birdie Wreath and dies. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Mama Elephant stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.